Reich rejected 12-tone music. For him, it bore no relationship to the world around him.
This is not Europe. This is America. This is, John Coltrane's playing at a jazz workshop. There are, hamburgers being sold. There's this Motown on the radio. How can you pretend in a world like that you're living in the dark brown angst of Vienna at the turn of the century? Or even that you're living in a bombed-out Cologne at the Westdeutsche Rundfunk in 1945? It's just not true.
What intrigued Reich was a purer tonality he was hearing in jazz.
John Coltrane was, from the middle 60s on, playing a lot of notes on almost one or two harmonies. Africa Brass, which was the piece that made the biggest impression on me, is a half an hour on E. And you would say, well, it's impossible. It's going to be boring. You can't sustain that. But he did. Well, how? Well, by having incredible range between screaming and noise and pure melody. And through changes of timbre, incredibly melodic inventiveness, incredible rhythmic complexity, you can stay put harmonically and make a music which is interesting. So this was a big lesson for me and for many, many others of my generation.
Reich, along with Terry Riley and other West Coast composers, wanted to write music with a simpler tonality, crystallized in Riley's piece called In C.
I played in the piece, there were a lot of problems in rehearsal staying together, and I suggested to Terry, why don't we have somebody, the good drummer, why don't we have somebody sort of drumming out something like C's that'll just keep us all together, and that's how the pulse entered the piece. But in all honesty, while I contributed that detail, I certainly learned from that piece enormously.
Reich developed the idea of repeating short patterns as a compositional technique by experimenting with tape. Using a portable recorder, he went to San Francisco's Union Square, where he recorded a street preacher's warning of a devastating flood.
He began to warn the people. He said, after a while, it's going to rain after a while, for 40 days and for 40 nights. And the people didn't believe him. And they began to laugh at him. And they began to mock him. And they began to say, it ain't going to rain.
At the moment that he said the words, it's going to rain, it's going to rain, actually, melodically, a pigeon took off. And the flapping of the pigeon's wings coincided with those words. So you had, when you looped it, when you cut it so that it's going to rain would go over and over again, you would not only get, it's going to rain, you would get, you had the pigeon drummer.
It's going to rain, 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 it's going to rain. I
thought, well, okay, I'm going to arrange this so that there's two loops, and it's going to come out so that you'll hear it's going to rain, 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 like 180 degrees apart from each other in a kind of little cannon around, like Ferrajaka. And I put on a pair of earphones with one jack plugged into one tape recorder and one on the other, and I pushed the two buttons, and by pure chance, the machines were absolutely together.
It's gonna rain, 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 it's gonna rain.
What's really riveting is this process of starting in unison and gradually separating, passing through all these different canonic relationships, these different mini rounds, and coming to various recognizably musically interesting parts, and then these irrational parts followed by another rational resting part. And finally, if you let it go, it comes back together again.
The effect of this on the listener, on this listener, was really quite dramatic. I kept hearing very complicated oral material from this. I mean, the Steve Reich tape pieces really are oral moire patterns. A moire pattern is the superimposition of two very, very simple patterns. They might just be parallel lines. When you superimpose them and you move them in relation to each other, you get very complex and unexpected movements. And I think the Reich piece, the tape pieces, work in the same way. They take advantage of the fact that your brain is very creative. It was sort of transferring the job of being the composer into the brain of the listener. So it's saying to the listener, your brain is actually making this piece of music, because you knew what the ingredients were. There's nothing mysterious about how the piece works.
It's gonna rain, it's gonna rain, it's gonna rain after a while.
But I thought, well, you know, this is a machine process. This is something tape recorders do, windshield wipers on a bus do it, bells at a railroad crossing do it, but people can't do that. But it's so fantastic. But people don't do that. And I just thought, well, if people don't do that, then it's just some kind of mechanical gimmick, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life locked up in, you know, in a tape loop machine. And I recorded this little pattern, which became the opening pattern of Piano Phase. And put it on a tape recorder, and sat down, closed my eyes, and said, okay, here we go. And this was going around and around on the tape recorder. I joined it in unison, and I began to try to move as slowly as possible ahead of the tape. And I found, wow, I can do it. And I have to concentrate on listening in a way that I've never concentrated on listening before, to judge that I just move as slowly as possible and don't just jump ahead one beat or get stuck and pull back. It's like a vacuum cleaner sort of pulling you either to one relationship forward or back that's rational, and trying to stay in the middle where it's very sort of spinning around and then get where you're going.